Welcome to the Depth Dive. Today, we're going into a case that has really stuck around for decades. The 1978 Burger Chef murders in Speedway, Indiana.
It's a tough one. And to, unpack it, we've got a couple of key sources. First up, bits from a news piece on the filmmakers behind a new documentary, The Speedway Murders. They spent like 6 years digging into this.
6 years, wow. And we're also using the Wikipedia page on the murders just to ground us in the main facts.
Exactly. So the mission today is to really get a handle on the key facts, the theories that won't go away, and maybe what this new film adds to the picture.
Right. So where does this whole deeply unsettling story really kick off?
It starts Friday night, November 17th, 1978, at the Burger Chef on Crawfordsville Road in Speedway. Sometime between closing around 11 p.m. and midnight, four young employees just vanished.
Four. Who were they?
Jane Freed, she's the assistant manager, just 20. And then three teenagers, Daniel Davis and Mark Flemons, both 16, and Ruth Sheldon, who was 17.
And at first, nobody knew they were missing, right? It looked like something else.
Yeah, initially, someone came by around midnight, found the place empty. The safe was open, about $581 gone. Back door slightly open.
$581. Not a huge amount.
No. And there weren't obvious signs of a big fight or anything. So the first thought was maybe petty theft.
Like the employees took it?
That was the initial police theory. Maybe they took the cash for a night out or something. They even left change, well, over $100 behind.
Okay. But that led to a problem, didn't it? A big one.
A critical one.
Yeah.
They didn't secure the crime scene properly. No photos were taken right away. And they actually let the restaurant reopen and get clean the next morning.
Oh, wow. That's devastating for evidence.
Absolutely. Any potential forensic evidence was basically wiped away. One of the officers, L. Langer, he later admitted, quote, "We screwed it up from the beginning."
You hate to hear that. Those first hours are so vital. So the idea of simple theft, that must have faded pretty fast.
It did. People started getting really worried when the employees just didn't show up. And Jane Fright's car, still parked outside, partly locked, that suggested she definitely didn't leave on her own.
So it shifted from theft to abduction.
Yeah, it quickly became clear this was much worse. Probably a kidnapping. Maybe happened when they were taking the trash out back.
And then a couple of days later, the worst possible news.
Exactly. Sunday afternoon, some hikers found them, all four, in a wooded area down in Johnson County, over 20 miles away from the Burger Chef.
Oh, God. How were they found?
It was brutal. Daniel Davis and Ruth Shelton, they'd been shot multiple times, .38 caliber.
Okay.
Jane Fright was stabbed twice in the chest. So violently, the knife handle actually broke off. They found the blade later, during the autopsy.
Jeez. And Mark Flemons?
He'd been badly beaten, maybe with something like a chain. The cause of death was choking on his own blood.
And they were still
Still on their worst.
in their Burger Chef uniforms.
That detail is just incredibly chilling. And they still had money on them. Watches. They did. Which, really throws cold water on the idea that this was just a robbery.
Right. Makes you think robbery might have been part of it, but maybe not the whole story, or maybe not the original plan.
Precisely. It suggested something much darker. The main theory then became a robbery that went terribly wrong, somehow escalated to kidnapping and murder.
And there was speculation about why, right? Like maybe someone was recognized.
That was a key part of the theory. Maybe one of the victims knew one of the attackers. Mark Flemons often comes up here because he was supposedly covering someone else's shift that night.
So maybe the perpetrators weren't expecting him to be there.
That's the idea. A plan gone wrong because of an unexpected face. It's a disturbing thought.
Definitely. Did anyone see anything suspicious that night? Any witnesses?
There was one potentially significant sighting. A 16-year-old kid saw two guys, white, looked like they were in their 30s, acting suspiciously in a car outside the Burger Chef just before it closed.
Okay. Any description?
Yeah. One had a beard, the other was clean-shaven with fair hair. They actually made clay models based on what the kid described.
Clay models. Like composite sketches, but 3D. Did those lead anywhere solid?
Not to any immediate arrests, no.
Yeah.
But the early investigation did turn up some, let's say, interesting possibilities, things that almost fit.
Like what?
Well, there was this guy in a bar in Greenwood who apparently bragged about being involved.
Bragged about it. Seriously.
Yeah. Now, he passed a polygraph denying he was directly involved in the killing itself, but he did give up some names. Said they were part of a sort of fast food robbery gang. Potential suspects.
Okay, a gang hitting fast food places? That sounds plausible, at least. What happened with those names?
Well, this is where it gets tantalizingly close, but frustrating. Investigators found a guy in Franklin who looked a lot like the bearded composite.
Okay.
But the night before he was supposed to be in a police lineup, he shaved the beard off. A beard he'd apparently had for 5 years.
That's really suspicious timing.
Isn't it? And get this, a neighbor of this bearded guy, who was also named by the bar braggart, later went to prison for armed robbery.
And the fair-haired guy description.
Another associate named by the braggart matched that description, and guess what? Also later in prison for other fast food robberies.
Wow. It really feels like the police were circling the right group of people, matching descriptions, similar MO with robberies.
It does feel that way. They even offered plea deals, apparently. Told suspects if they weren't the actual killers but had information, they could get a deal.
But no takers.
No confessions.
Right.
And without direct confessions or any solid physical evidence actually tying these specific guys to the burger chef scene itself, they couldn't make arrests.
Just couldn't bridge that final gap.
Yeah.
Frustrating. Were there other theories floating around back then?
Yeah, there was some early talk about links to other local crimes, another murder, some bombings in Speedway, but those were eventually ruled out. Didn't seem connected.
So despite these promising, almost their leads, the trail sort of went cold, at least publicly.
For a while, yeah. The investigation didn't stop, though. They kept working it, chased leads in Ohio, Wisconsin, Illinois, even Texas. Always hoping to find that key evidence, the gun, the knife handle, the chain.
But they never did.
Never found them. But then, years later, in 1984, something pretty significant happened. A confession from a guy named Donald Forrester.
Forrester. Right, he was already in prison.
Yep, locked up in Pendleton Correctional Facility. He reached out to a detective, Mel Wilsey, said he knew things about the Burger Chef murders.
Why come forward then? What was his angle?
He apparently wanted to avoid being transferred to a rougher prison unit, so he offered to confess in exchange for staying put, essentially. They brought him to Marion County, and he started talking.
And what did he say? Did he claim responsibility?
He confessed to shooting Daniel Davis and Ruth Shelton.
Wow. Did his story check out? Did he know details?
He knew things. He described the crime scene in the woods pretty accurately where the bodies were positioned, and crucially, he knew about the broken knife handle. That wasn't widely known public information.
Okay, that lends it some credibility. What did he say the motive was?
He claimed it was about a drug debt. Said Jane Fratt's brother owed money. Forrester claimed he and 3 others went to the Burger Chef just to threaten Jane.
Just threaten her. But obviously it escalated.
According to Forrester, Mark Flemons tried to intervene. A fight broke out. Forrester said they hit Flemons, thought he was dead or dying from hitting his head, and at that point, they decided they had to kill everyone, eliminate all the witnesses.
He implicated others then. Said, who killed Flemons and Fright?
He named 3 other people who he claimed actually killed Flemons and Jane Fratt.
Did he offer proof? Like where the weapon was?
He took police to a river, claimed he'd tossed the gun in there. They searched extensively, but nothing. No gun found.
But there was something else, wasn't there? Something involving his ex-wife.
Right. His ex-wife told police that shortly after the murders happened, Forrester took her out to some woods, made her help him find spent shell casings, which he then apparently flushed down their toilet.
Oh, okay. They check that out.
They did. They searched the septic tank at his old place, and they found .38 caliber shell casings.
Shell casings. That sounds like a smoking gun, or close to it. Why wasn't he charged?
It's another really frustrating turn. Somehow, details about his confession and cooperation got leaked to the media.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and after that, Forrester completely flipped, recanted everything, claimed the police had forced him, coerced the confession.
So without his continued cooperation, and maybe because the casings couldn't be definitively linked only to that crime.
Exactly. Without more direct physical evidence tying him undeniably to the murders, and with him now refusing to cooperate, they felt they couldn't charge him.
And he just stayed in prison for other things.
Yes. He died in prison back in 2006, and the Burger Chef case remained officially unsolved.
Man, that's agonizing. To have a confession corroborating details, physical evidence like the casings, and then have it all fall apart.
It's incredibly frustrating just hearing about it. Imagine living through it. Which kind of brings us to this new documentary, The Speedway Murders. Why did these filmmakers, from Australia no less, decide to tackle this case now?
Good question. What drew them in?
Well, Luke Rinderman and Adam Kamian, the filmmakers, spent 6 years on this. They felt the case got overshadowed initially because the Jonestown massacre happened literally the next day. Huge international news.
Ah, right. That makes sense. The timing was just terrible for media attention.
Exactly. They felt nobody had really done that promised deep dive. And they also said they pretty quickly saw what they called dodgy police work in the initial stages.
So they wanted to re-examine everything.
Yeah, see if fresh eyes, after all this time, could uncover something new, maybe bring some kind of clarity.
And I read their approach was kind of different, focusing a lot on the victims themselves.
Very much so. Reinderman specifically said they wanted to put Jane, Daniel, Mark, and Ruth at the center. Not just names on a cold case file, but real people.
How did they do that?
Get this. They built a replica of the 1978 Burger Chef restaurant
Mm.
in Australia, and they cast actors to play the 4 victims. The film apparently shows these actors as the victims, sort of discussing the case, the theories about what happened to them.
Wow, that's a really unusual and powerful concept. Building the whole restaurant, that's serious commitment.
It really shows how invested they were. But tackling a 40-plus-year-old case must have had huge challenges.
I bet. What did they say were the biggest hurdles?
Adam Kamian mentioned time, obviously. Memories fade after 4 decades. Stories can change. Just sifting through all the existing information, trying to figure out what was solid and what wasn't, was a massive task.
And dealing with the families, I imagine. That requires a lot of sensitivity.
Absolutely. They talked about feeling a huge weight of responsibility, wanting to honor the victims and the family's trust, avoid making it sensational.
Did anything surprise them during those 6 years? Anything jump out?
Kamian said that a lot of the popular theories, things people had believed for years, didn't really stand up when they looked closely.
Oh, like what?
Well, the article mentions the documentary, questions that idea of a purely random, opportunistic robbery. They point to maybe inconsistencies in the timeline, things left behind, suggesting maybe it was more targeted than people thought.
Interesting. What else surprised them?
Reinderman talked about just how raw the pain still is for everyone affected, even after all this time. But also, both of them seemed genuinely moved by how willing people were to talk, to share what they knew or remembered. That deep, lingering hope for answers.
Yeah, you can feel that need for closure. What are the filmmakers proudest of, looking back at the project?
Kamian mentioned finding a witness who'd never been interviewed before. They believe this person provided a new lead, maybe points towards a different suspect. That felt like a real breakthrough.
A new lead after all this time. That's significant.
Potentially, yeah. He was also proud of how they handled the recreations, trying to be really sensitive. Reinderman highlighted bringing the victims back to life, in a way, through the casting and just the incredible detail they put into that Burger Chef set. Original uniforms, vintage cars, even greasy burgers to make it feel authentic 1978.
It sounds like an incredible effort, not just to investigate, but to humanize everyone involved. Do they actually think their film could lead to an arrest? Do they hold out hope for that?
They hope it might contribute, definitely. But they're also realistic. Kamian basically said without new physical evidence like finding the gun, which is highly unlikely, or maybe a deathbed confession, it's really tough for police to make an arrest stick after so long.
Yeah, the lack of hard evidence is the constant problem.
It is. Reinderman echoed that. How can someone keep a secret like that for so long, yet without proof?
Mm.
It's just incredibly difficult.
A really stark reminder of how hard cold cases are. Justice has just stayed out of reach here. How has the community remembered the victims over the years?
Well, in 2018, on the 40th anniversary, the Speedway community raised money for a memorial in a local park, Leonard Park.
That's nice. What did they do?
They planted 4 red oak trees, one for each victim, each with a little plaque, and a marble bench, too, a place for reflection.
That's a lovely tribute. What about the building itself, the old Burger Chef?
Sadly, the building as a pawn shop for a long time was actually demolished just earlier this year, in March 2024.
Huh. End of an era, in a way. Have there been other looks at the case?
Oh, yeah. There was another documentary on Investigation Discovery back in 2022, and the FBI files on the case are actually public record. You can access them.
And the police? Is it still technically open?
Yes, the Indiana State Police say the case is still open. They've even looked into using modern DNA techniques on any existing evidence. The fact they're still trying, still exploring forensic advancements, shows they haven't given up.
So after digging through all this, we're still left with so many questions, aren't we? The core mystery remains.
Absolutely. Was it just a robbery gone bad? Was it targeted from the start because of this alleged drug debt? What was the real deal with that fast food gang and the guy who shaved his beard? And Forrester's confession. What really happened there?
So many threads, none definitively tied up. It's clear this crime just carved a deep wound in Speedway. And the search for answers, for justice, it clearly continues.
It does. And these filmmakers with the Speedway murders, they've really tried to make sure we remember Jane, Daniel, Mark, and Ruth, not just as statistics in an unsolved case, but as young people whose lives were tragically cut short.
Which brings us to a final thought, maybe for you listening. Decades have passed. Concrete proof is still missing. What does our ongoing fascination with a case like the Burger Chef murders tell us? What does it say about our need, maybe our fundamental need, for closure, for answers, for justice, especially when faced with something so senseless and tragic?